Hello everyone, welcome to the Introduction to Nanotechnology lecture. Today, in this lecture, we'll talk about what is nanotechnology. This is again, we are in the module 1. The purple rung is for the module 1, and we will be continuing discussion on this. You already have received one paper, there's plenty of room at the bottom by Dr. Richard Feynman, on which you have to work on a homework problem as well. What is nanotechnology? How do we understand the concept that is encompassed in this idea? There are many different fields, many different uh, academic and research directions that use the word nanotechnology. So there's no one textbook or one, I would say, even a field that can clearly uh, take nanotechnology under its wings. So hence we have to keep on looking at the current trends and current things that are coming out. But officially, this was agreed upon that any system, any device that has one dimension at least that is in the range of 100 nanometer or less, then we would consider this to be part of nanotechnology. And the major push for making things smaller came from optical lithography, which is a major part of solid state device fabrication, which is another way of calling the silicon based devices, cell phones, laptops, computers, almost all electronic gadgets. They all are made by a process called optical lithography or lithography. Now we are in the area of electron beam lithography, where instead of using light, we are using electrons to transfer those designs or patterns that a VLSI person makes into the surface of the chip. So now, when it has been historically pushed by device manufacturers of how small we make. So by the end of last century, we were making things at the scale of 100 nanometer. Now we are making things at the scale of even 4 nanometer. We'll talk about that in a later lecture. So across the board, if you think about it, there is there are different size scales in living systems, in natural systems. We start with, of course, human, but when you look at size that goes into the what do you call ants and more on the animal side, we see many small things. We see many small things in our garden. So they're on the range of what we would call at millimeter scale. But then we get into micro scale. We keep on pushing down. We get into uh, from micro scale where blood cells would be 2 to 5, 20 to 50 micrometer will get down into nanoscale, which is 10 raised to power minus 9. Now, on that living side, things have been there, and now we have been figuring out, especially now when we have the equipment, we can look at things which are smaller. On the synthetic side or man-made things, we have been using micro-scale things, what we call as MEMS, for many, many years, for many decades. But now we are pushed down to where we can make things at nanoscale repeatedly and very controllably. So these are two very important words. We can make things repeatedly and controllably. For example, we can use carbon nanotubes where we get very precise diameters. We can, this is from IBM probably 20 years ago, where they placed individual atoms in the form of a coral. And if you look at this picture, those pointed tips are individual atoms, and then you see atoms all around it. So all these bumpy spaces, which you can see in this grayscale, also this color, falsely colored picture, these are all single atoms. So we have had this control now to make things repeatedly and reproducibly. Where did it all start? Where did the concept of nanotechnology start? So in the talk by Dr. Feynman, you will see that he gave the ideas, he gave the concepts, but he never used the word nanotechnology because at that time people were not talking about nanotechnology. There was a major push in this direction which started in 98. President Clinton signed what we call today as National Nanotechnology Initiative. What it did was it laid out a plan from the government for next 10 years or so that how much would be invested in this direction. So interestingly, this was signed into, the funding was signed in 2003, $2.3 billion. But historically, we were way behind than other countries. So if you look at uh, this view graph on the right-hand side, red is US, Japan, Europe, and other countries have been investing significantly in nanotechnology as well. So it's, we were moving fast, but the other countries were also moving much faster. For example, if you look at it, South Korea announced a 2 billion government initiative in 2003 as well. And the simple reason was because whoever would control the nano manufacturing would control the next century. And today we are at a stage where we know Intel, we know Global Foundry, but there's a major giant in Taiwan, which is called TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. So there is a major foundry or major development organization which is not a US. So this direct result of their investment into that direction. So looking at size and scale a little bit further, we will do an exercise on how do we go from one size to another size. We talk about a meter. A meter is about 39 inches. And then if you look at a person's eyeball, you would see that this is about a centimeter. And then if you, a centimeter is a hundredth part of a meter. But then we have millimeter, which is thousandth part of a millimeter. So this is talking about a microchip, so to speak, in the eyeball. And then we have, so this is 1,000 times smaller than a meter. Then we would have a million times smaller than a meter, what we call as MEMS, micro electromechanical systems. So what MEMS would do is these are the moving parts in our devices, in our gadgets. Yeah, if you think about it, a cell phone, we believe that this is all static, but there are small chips in there which have some moving parts, which can detect our acceleration, which can detect our orientation, which can basically have moving parts that do their own job, whatever they're supposed to do. And then 1,000 times smaller than that is what you would call as nanoscale. So this is something to put in perspective that how you can convert one thing into the other. So if you think about it, human hair is about 8,000 to 10,000 nanometer, or another way, it's 80 to 100 micrometer. So you have to be very comfortable about zeros and the placements of zeros. Because at the end of the day, we start at atomic scale and we build everything from there. So if we are talking about uh, things around us, nanoscale world is what determines whatever the properties and whatever qualities are there for everything. So uh, nowadays we talk about uh, coronavirus. So virus is again a very small entity, but when it infects, it affects the whole large scale living human being. So everything depends on everything else, especially when you go down in the size and scale. So now this is just to get the message across that nano is the 1 billionth of a meter, and it's 100,000 times smaller than a human hair. And if you think about it, 1 cubic micron is 100,000. A millionth part of A meter would contain about 90 billion atoms. A sheet of paper is about 100,000 nanometer thick. Now, if I convert that 100,000 nanometer into micrometer, I would drop last three zeros and that would give me 100 micrometer. If I were to explain that in millimeters, I will have to divide it by 1,000 and that would become 0.1 millimeter. So just to give a perspective. Now, human hair, I said 80 to 100 micrometer. This is a real picture of human hair. And you can see in this picture, there's hair, which is the big thing, which has all these rough surface features on it. And then there is a carbon nanotube, which is placed on top of that. So nanomaterial is so much smaller than even human hair. So many of us engineers already know this. How do we convert from, many of us know going in bigger size than smaller size. So if we have to go from 1 meter or anything in its unit, when you have 1,000 of it, we call it kilometer in this case, or if you are dealing with the frequency, we call it kilohertz, which is 1,000 hertz. And similar, when you have 10 raised to power 6, a million of something, we call it megahertz, for example, right? Million hertz or megameter, although we don't use that terminology, but wherever you would see mega, you would mean a million megabytes, right? So million bytes. Keep on going. We have gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, exabyte. Or if you have to go down in a similar way, instead of multiplying with that factor, we divide with that factor. So 10 raised to power 3, 10 to the power 3 is millimeter, milligram, and that would mean 1,000th of a meter. Keep on going down, micrometer, nanometer, picometer, femto, atto. So that's where how you would convert from one size or one dimension to the other. Let's take a look at a ruler. We have, we know dime, one dime is 1.8 centimeter. Right? We know inches, we work with inches most of the time. So 1 inch is about 2.54 centimeter as it is shown here. Right? Now, 3 feet make 1 yard. And then 1 meter is slightly larger than a yard. So 1 feet is 12 inches, 1 yard is 36 inches. So a meter is 3.36 inches longer than a yard. Now, when you have a meter, then we take its centi, right? Go back. Centi is between, centi is 10 raised to power minus 2, which is divided by 100. Now, from that centi, if I blow up this centimeter, we can see millimeters, right? So there are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. So for going from this centimeter is then what we do. If you take that 1 millimeter, which is 1/10 of a centimeter, we further divide that 1 millimeter into 1,000 small pieces. That would give us micrometer. And human hair is 80 to 100 micrometer. Now, when you divide that micro to further 1,000 pieces, what we got as nanometer. Human hair is 80 to 80,000 to 100,000 nanometer. Or we can take those 3 zeros, or we can say 80 micrometer to 100 micrometer. So this is simple way how we would go from one unit to the other unit. Again, if you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll be happy to address your questions and concerns.